Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Kathy Hill, and I'm WITI's webinar manager, and we're so thrilled to have you with us today. We have a great hour planned for you. We have Lori Wiggins with us and Hector Del Castillo, and they're going to be talking about 9 surefire ways to grow your business fast. Hi, Hector and Lori. Welcome. Before we get started, hi. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. I am recording today's session as always, and if you'd like to come back and listen to the recording and see the slides, you can do so at the link that I put in the chat box. You may have to scroll back up to the top of the chat box, but you'll find the link there. And I do want to mention for those of you new to our webinar program that that link will take you to the archive of all of our past recordings. So please do take advantage of that. It comes with your WITI membership, and we have some amazing speakers and topics for you. I also want to mention that the chat box is where Lori and Hector will be taking your questions and comments from. So please go ahead and type them in the chat box. There is a little icon above our heads for Q&A, but if you would, don't use that. Go ahead and use the chat box. It makes it a whole lot easier for us to access your questions. So without further ado, let me go ahead and briefly introduce our 2 speakers today. As I mentioned, we have Lori Wiggins with us, and Lori is Beyond's Chief Executive Officer and co-founder. And we also have Hector Del Castillo with us, and Hector is Beyond's Chief Product Officer and co-founder. So welcome to both Lori and Hector, and I'm going to go ahead and turn the webinar over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Kathy, and welcome everyone. And as I mentioned, I'm Hector Del Castillo, and I am Chief Product Officer at Beyond, and Lori Wiggins with me, and she is CEO of Beyond. Hi, Lori, how are you?
I'm great. It's great to be here. I'm excited to do this webinar today and to take your questions, which I very much look forward to.
Great. Well, let's get started. So today's topic is 9 surefire ways to grow your business. And before we get started, I want to give a special thanks to everyone at WITI, Women in Technology International, for inviting us to lead this discussion today. And as Kathy mentioned earlier, they'll be recording this for all the members. And we're also going to be making this available to our followers via a post-event landing page. We'll be announcing the link where you can get that information and also view the slides, and we'll be posting the video after that as well. So we'd like to welcome all WITI members and also our followers to today's discussion. A little bit about Beyond, we are a business strategy consulting firm, and we enable technology and software companies to grow faster than their competition by building a bold and actionable growth strategy. And today's discussion will focus specifically on what is needed to grow your business faster than the competition. If you're on Twitter, use this particular hashtag business growth in addition to Beyond MA handle and also the @WITI handle. You can also follow Lori and myself using our personal handles, and you can share information. So be happy if you guys can share with your followers anything that you see valuable that comes out of today's discussion using the hashtag business growth, also the Beyond MA and WITI handles. Today's discussion will focus on why do most companies fail to achieve significant business growth? And we'll be focusing on 9 ways that you can consider to actually grow your business faster than the competition. So let's go ahead and get started. Today, disruption is everywhere. And what disruption means for most small businesses and mid-market companies is that you are dealing with a lot more complexity, volatility, ambiguity, and uncertainty. And often that means that you have rising and changing expectations, and also their perception of value is constantly changing in addition to competition than before. And often it's a struggle because these are all business growth killers to figure out how to deal with some of these challenges if you are sensing them in your industry or market. And even Boston Consulting Group is saying that in today's world of so much disruption, there are 2 reasons why companies end up imploding and often failing, meaning they go out of business or are sold, when they go into bankruptcy. And number one, companies today not only need to optimize, but they also need to explore, and they need to have a balance of both, not one or the other, but actually in their operations, they need to optimize and increase productivity at the same time that they're looking at scaling and exploring new ways of doing things in order to actually take advantage of today's market opportunities. And there's a TED Talk behind this. You can actually click through this hyperlink on your own time, and you'll be able to hear this particular discussion that is a TED Talk. So we're going to actually shift into a poll before we get started, and actually Kathy will push this particular question. So the question we want you to tell us, in your company today, which one of these 5 things you consider the biggest barrier to actually getting positive growth within your company today? So we'll give you a few minutes to answer this particular question, and then we can get moving, and we'll announce the actual percentages. You'll see them on your screen in real time. So we'll give you a chance to vote, a few seconds to vote. So Lori, we talked about these 5 different options, and which ones do you think are, based on your experience, our greatest challenges when we talk to clients?
This is going to be very interesting to see. Typically, folks have a number of challenges. It's not just one. Sometimes it's multiple, and sometimes it's all of them. So let's see about the results of our poll. I'm seeing here that inadequate planning seems to predominate, which of course is very common.
Great. Well, let's go ahead and give a few more seconds for the audience to respond. And audience, if you can actually choose one of these 5, figure out which one is the biggest challenge or barrier to actually growing your company today. And we're going to be closing the poll in a few seconds, and we'll give you a few more seconds to actually respond, because I see still some activity. So pick one, and then we can actually show the actual response. Well, it looks like right now, inadequate planning is actually number 1, and there's actually a close second, tie for second, and that is lack of time in addition to poor execution. So let's go ahead and close the poll, and we can actually talk a little more about some of these things that we're doing. But typically, any of these and any combination of these will actually be the results when there's so much disruption in the marketplace. And you end up even having inadequate planning in your growth plan, and often inability or poor execution are the main culprits as to what are business growth killers. So let's go ahead and continue the conversation. A recent study that was published by Strategy And, which is a PwC company, found that 80% of company leaders excel at both strategy and execution. And what they mean by that is that in today's world, you need to be great at both, and actually to get positive growth within your business. You have to be great at not just designing and developing your company strategy as to how you're going to be growing, but you also have to be great at execution. And often, most companies are either good at one or the other and not both. And the result is that only 8% of companies actually get positive growth and become, over time, market leaders in their industries and their markets. What we've been discussing today is, why is growth strategy so important to actually getting positive growth within your business? We're going to talk about 9 things that you can do, 9 ways that you can actually choose to do any combination of these to actually grow your business faster than your competition. And Lori, as we are covering each of these 9 points, Lori will actually go over some brief case studies of companies who are actually using some of these methods to grow faster than their competition. Have a wrap up with key takeaways, and then we'll get into the Q&A. So be sure to submit your questions during the using the chat window in order for us to have something that we can discuss during the Q&A portion. And we'll be allocating enough time so that we can actually get to all your questions during the Q&A portion of today's discussion. So the first thing is why is a growth strategy so important to actually getting positive growth within your business? And the first thing is that a well-defined strategy drives growth. And this is actually from a recent study report that was actually published by the National Center for Middle Market, and saying that a well-defined strategy allows companies to, number one, inspire employees and understand exactly what is needed to actually achieve positive growth. And in inspiring not just the management team, but everyone within the company, they can also then clearly articulate the value proposition that they're offering and to whom, their customer segments and their main customer segments that they're targeting, and clearly understand who are their customers, who are not their customers. It's also important in order to have a great designed strategy that is relevant and actionable to have a robust development process as to how you come up with that strategy. And we're going to talk about ways that actually you can do that. And then finally, it's also crucial to not only have a great strategy and communicate that strategy within the company, but also translate that strategy into actionable plans. And we're going to talk about specifically what are the steps that you can do to actually create actionable plans that are also measurable during the implementation of your growth strategy. And in essence, you have three pillars of strategy. It's about how you define it, how you develop it, and also how you execute it that is crucial. You have to, all three things are interrelated with each other, and you need to make sure that you include all of this in your strategic planning process about growth for your business. So let's talk about now 9 surefire ways to grow your company. So number one, the path to growth requires a bold strategy. And what I mean by that is you need to have and you need to shape a bold growth strategy and involve internal and external stakeholders to ensure that you have the right strategy given the context of what's happening in your market and industry. In your process, you need everyone to start answering these questions. Where is your growth going to be coming from? And not only where is it going to be coming from in the next 12 months, but where is it going to be coming from even beyond the next 12 months? And how is it that over time, you can actually build a growth engine within your company so that growth becomes a sustainable activity within your business? And here are some samples of questions that you need to consider asking when you're in the process of defining and developing your growth strategy. And now here's an example of a company.
In order to compete against GM, Toyota, Honda, and other auto companies, Tesla's bold strategy was to employ advanced, environmentally friendly technologies to high-end early adopters. Now that their electric cars have become more popular and they've gotten a handle on their production costs, which are declining, this has enabled the company to broadly target customers. To continue their competitive edge, Tesla has stepped up its R&D efforts, especially in battery technology, which helps the cars go more miles between charges. As Tesla broadens its market, it's broadening its capabilities as well. The current Model 3 costs $45,000, very affordable for many others.
Great, thank you, Lori. And the next step is that the path to growth requires a holistic perspective. And what I mean by that is that you have to understand your current situation in a holistic way, from a 360 perspective for industry and market, understand clearly your business position or strength, and also understand other key things that give context to your strategy, and that is, what are the collaborators that are out there that you need to consider, identify, and establish key relationships with? What are the macro trends as well as to micro trends that are about the business environment and things that may be barriers or threats to what you're trying to achieve in the marketplace? Understand your competitors as well as how buyer behavior changes and what's happening in the perception of value, the value that you're delivering in the marketplace that is about your customers, and understanding how that behavior is changing over time. In addition to that, it's critical to use that information to then translate into an actionable approach and having a plan that can be measured and managed during the implementation of your growth strategy. And a balanced scorecard is one way of actually defining the metrics and your targets as to what you're trying to achieve across the different perspectives, not just about the financial piece about your company, but also about customer segments that you're trying to retain or acquire, in addition to employee satisfaction and training, and then have clarity as to how you're going to be documenting and improving key activities and take advantage of those growth opportunities that are happening in the market. Here's an example.
After taking a hard look at their competition, Caterpillar executives realized that they better disrupt themselves, as Doug Oberhelman, the president, put it, or somebody else is going to do it for them. In the heavy machinery industry, uptime is a key metric. In order to increase uptime, CAT networked all of its 3 million machines globally, and they engaged Uptake Technologies, a data mining startup, to help them facilitate the data analysis so that they could develop algorithms that help them understand when machines were going to fail. Then they could dispatch parts, people, and any other resources needed in order to maintain the machine before it failed, thus increasing uptime and remaining ahead of its competition. Caterpillar would not have taken these radical steps without understanding their competitive landscape, and it's paid off. Caterpillar's annual revenue for 2017 increased 18% over 2016, and its 2018 revenues of $54.7 billion increased over 20% from 2017.
Thank you, Lori. The path to growth also requires customer focus. And what I mean by this is that you need to figure out, number one, how you can boost customer value. The reason for that is because several experts are saying that the best way to retain customers over time is to continue to enhance and improve the value that you're delivering to them. And that includes focusing on understanding ways to improve the customer experience. The more of this you do, the more retention and acquisition of customers that you're gonna actually be able to do. Both of these is what you need to actually grow your business faster. And usually what you find when you're a small business or even a mid-market company is that your business model is out of balance. What I mean by that is that your customer acquisition costs are much higher than the customer lifetime values for each of your customers. And over time, what you need to figure out to do through activities is to figure out how to turn that around so that you can actually lower customer acquisition costs and increase your customer lifetime value. You do this by actually focusing on improving the customer experience and figuring out how to enhance and maximize the value that you're delivering to them over time. So in essence, by focusing on things like inbound marketing activities, outbound marketing, and sales, and maintaining customer satisfaction high, this is what's going to help you then lower your customer acquisition cost and increase your customer lifetime value. And here's an example of two companies that are doing this.
So Chick-fil-A, according to the American Customer Satisfaction Index latest survey, has led the field of limited service or fast food restaurants for the third straight year. They excel in several aspects of fast food service, including quick service, cheerful and helpful employees, and food quality. For younger demographics, they have invested in mobile technology. In contrast, McDonald's trails in 16th place behind Papa John's, Pizza Hut, Subway, Chipotle, KFC, and other restaurants. In fact, the four burger chains, Wendy's, Burger King, Jack in the Box, and McDonald's, have exhibited or nearly flat customer satisfaction over the past 3 years. Boosting customer value helps you stay ahead of your competition.
Thank you, Lori. The path to growth also requires knowing your competition. And what I mean by that is that it's not only enough to understand their sales or who they are, identify them and their location and what they're selling, their offering compared to yours. It also is important for you to define benchmark metrics and not only use those metrics to gauge your internal performance and productivity of your own company, but use the same ones to actually benchmark your competition. Things like profitability, your sales revenue, in addition to best practices and methods and even intellectual property, things that are going to be about measuring how you can actually, your ability to either leapfrog the competition or catch up to them when needed. And often it goes beyond just competitive analysis. It's really understanding the competitive landscape in order to ensure that you understand what is the best approach to actually benchmarking your company operations and comparing that to your competitors. Here's some examples.
Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks are competitors. Since its founding in 1948, Dunkin', formerly Dunkin' Donuts, has always sold donuts and coffee and is known for both. However, Dunkin' is de-emphasizing donuts, although they still continue to sell them, and expanding its coffee and espresso offerings. It's also offering breakfast foods and is experimenting with beer on tap. Although Starbucks is far larger, Starbucks revenues are 25 times greater than Dunkin's. Dunkin's customer satisfaction recently surpassed that of Starbucks. Their customer base is growing and they are expanding with new stores. Now, Starbucks is the global leader in mobile food service today. They have done many things over the years in order to enhance their mobile service, and in fact, 30% of Starbucks orders take place on mobile devices. They've been able to decrease their line waiting times, and they have a world-class customer loyalty program. Despite these advances, however, customers are not as happy with Starbucks due to operational issues as well as the mishandling of the incident in Philadelphia last year. Also, virtue signaling, in other words, banning plastic straws, may have been a contributor to customer dissatisfaction. So, are these two competitors benchmarking each other? Bet on it.
Thank you, Lori. The path to growth also requires teamwork. And what I mean by that is that as a business owner, you need to be great at building and nurturing high-performing teams. This means that you need to have not just a way to retain employees and minimize churn rate, but also figure out how to cultivate the right culture within your business. And the right culture will be to understand, to have everybody, all your employees understand what is a growth mindset and what is required to actually win in the marketplace when you have so many competitors and an increasing number of competitors and also changing buyer behavior. You want to be able to cultivate the right cultures within your company. And also you want to be able to inspire employees to drive profitable growth. A recent Bain study shows that by focusing on inspiring employees and helping them understand what is a superior customer experience that needs to be delivered, that attracts customers and not only retains customers, but also creates loyal customers that in turn will actually help you acquire even more customers. And over time, that equates into growing revenue and higher profitability. And if you can do this at a higher rate than your competition, this leads to sustainable, profitable, organic growth for your company. So focus on employees, and that in turn, delivering a high customer experience, a strong, superior customer experience creates customer advocacy, and that creates sustainable, profitable, organic growth. Here's an example.
Thank you, Hector. So the airline industry is not exactly known for its cheerful employees or its great customer service. However, Southwest Airlines is. Whether you've been on a Southwest flight where they were cracking jokes during the security briefing, or you were at a counter and faced a very cheerful employee, somehow Southwest keeps their employees happy and friendly. And they are also empowered by the company to help and do whatever it takes to satisfy the customer. Southwest is not new to this game. They've been around for 43 years, and yet they've managed to communicate their goals and vision to their employees in a way that makes them part of a unified team. The takeaway here is that employees that are convinced of a larger common goal are people who are excited to be part of a larger purpose. Great culture leads to great teams and contributes to Southwest's overall growth.
Thank you, Lori. The path to growth requires collaboration. And what I mean by collaboration is that you need to understand what are those businesses out there downstream from you and upstream from you, from the end buyers, that you can actually identify and then establish relationships with. So downstream may include suppliers and partners, and upstream can include distribution channels and referral partners. And often what you want to do is you want to make sure that you choose your collaborators wisely. And that is, you want to make sure that at least anyone that you choose downstream or upstream from you are not the same entities and organizations or businesses that your competitors also have access to. And often it takes work to identify these particular stakeholders that are either downstream or upstream from you and find out which ones are the best ones to establish a relationship with. And here's some examples.
The Apple Pay app allows people to store their credit card and debit card information on the phone, so they don't have to have the physical card with them when they want to make a purchase. In order to have this app function, however, it needed credit card companies to integrate with the technology. Credit card companies, of course, are facing more competition themselves if they aren't compatible with the latest consumer purchasing tools. In order to get out ahead of its competition, MasterCard stepped up and became the first credit card company to allow their users, their customers, to use Apple Pay. MasterCard not only showed support of a major consumer tech developer in this partnership, but it also evolved its own customers and how they pay. Together, Apple and MasterCard created great customer value that they could not have achieved alone. A great collaboration.
Thank you, Lori. The path to growth also requires funding. And what we mean by that is that often initiatives that are about growing your business will require not just allocation of resources, but also funding. And often, because you only have limited funding and limited resources, it's a must to prioritize. But when you need to quickly come up with funding to actually start funding your highest priority growth initiatives, it is crucial to figure out how to start monetizing more from existing products. And that means you need to focus on growing not just revenue streams, but often the residual revenue streams, because those are usually easier to deal with. Here's an example of some of the types of residual revenue streams, and there are 5, and each one of these has a different way that you are monetizing and how often, based on buyer behavior that needs to be analyzed and understood, so that you can then quickly turn on the right ones for the right customer segments and then start upselling and cross-selling to different customer segments without changing your offering. It's just about figuring out how to monetize differently from your existing offering. Here are some examples.
Thanks, Hector. So recurring or residual revenue streams are not all created equal. Going from the bottom of the chart to the top, they actually increase in value as far as businesses go. When you think about repeat customers, think about your neighborhood grocery store, where you might stop by once or twice a week to pick up groceries and other items. If they have good service and they have what you want, there's no reason to go anywhere else, although there's no barriers to you doing so. Looking at repeat revenue, think eBay. eBay, the more you use the online auctions, the more valuable they become to you. And in fact, can you think of a competitor in their segment? Not really. For sequential revenue, think Dropbox, where Dropbox has a free capability and they draw you in with free storage and a very easy ability to share files and photos and other things with others. They also have a premium service that businesses use. So they pull you in with the free service and then they upsell you to the premium service. As far as autopay goes, Comcast is a good example of this. You opt in and you pay until you, the consumer, opt out. Last but not least is the contractual arrangement. Think your cell phone contract, where you have to sign up for 12 months, for 24 months, and if you want an early out, you have to pay for the privilege. From a business point of view, this is the very best of recurring or residual revenue streams.
Thank you, Lori. The path to growth also requires tenacity. And this includes figuring out ways to expand your offering. Usually within any organization, you always are talking about build versus buy. And usually that's typical when you are looking at activities that are within your Horizon 1. That is, figuring out how to expand your offering organically in the next 12 months. Usually build versus buy is the best approach to try to figure out how to do it with minimizing your cost in addition to the actual activities that need to be performed. But often the third part, which is about partnering with the right organizations, is about identifying key suppliers or key partners that are downstream from you to actually start allowing you to go to market faster and reduce your operational cost and also then have something that you can launch sooner without having to spend a lot of money. So usually this has to do with these options of build, buy, or partner are the usual things that you can do to drive activities that are about growth initiatives that are part of Horizon 2 or Horizon 3, meaning anything that is 12 to 18 months or longer to actually execute before you can have something to launch. And often the ways that you can expand your portfolio includes any of these 5 steps, from looking at analyzing the information that you're collecting about your current customers, and also figuring out ways to enhance or maximize the value that you're delivering to existing customers so you can retain them, and then also find new suppliers and strategic partners that you can establish relationships with, finding markets that are growing faster so that you can enter them and find suitable distribution channels that have access to those markets, in addition to then using that information that you're collecting to figure out how to improve and how to build and launch new products in the marketplace. And here's an example of companies that are doing this.
IKEA is the world's largest furniture retailer. However, they found that same-store sales have been flat lately amid the growing shift to online. But at the same time, customers want to touch and feel furniture, so in-store visits are important. And they discovered that what was going on was that customers would come to the store, look at the furniture, and then go home and order online. To address shifting preferences in online sales, they expand their convenience shopping to include home delivery, and they make vans available for rent so that people like poor college students can get their newly purchased furniture home. They're also starting to rent furniture, which some call sofa as a service. So they recognized the online trend and they expanded their service in order to make sure that they remain the market leader. IKEA has increased its revenue every year through 2018, much better than its competition, although their profits have suffered due to expansion costs.
The path to growth requires the right mindset. And I mentioned earlier, the right culture is a growth mindset culture. So that is the right mindset to ensure that you're inspiring your employees and that you're nurturing high-performing teams. Help everyone within your company understand what is a growth mindset. And the growth mindset includes that once you have saturated your organic growth initiatives, the way that you can continue to build your company is not through inorganic growth, which is looking at possible acquisitions of other businesses that allow you to maximize the value that you're delivering in the marketplace, scale your business, and continue to improve the productivity by leveraging capabilities with offerings and markets, and ensuring that you're continue to target and scale to your customer segments that have been buying. So here are 4 ways that you can look for possible acquisitions. Number 1, you want to be able to exploit a business industry-specific scalability, and you need to look for the right suitable targets. Also, you can actually accelerate market access and create cross-sell and upsell opportunities by looking at companies that are in different markets and from where your company is actually operating today, and then leveraging each other's offerings so that you can become each other's distribution channels across the markets where you both are operating in. Also, often it's easier to actually gain skills or technologies faster and at a lower cost by acquiring other businesses rather than either learning those skills or building those capabilities on your own. And often you can also look and identify ways to franchise your business model so you can actually leverage investors and funding to actually scale the growth of your business. These are all options that are available to you when you're looking at possible acquisitions. Here's an example.
Incumbents that want to remain leaders often have to disrupt themselves, and Walmart did this through acquisitions. 5 years ago, recognizing the trend to online purchases, Walmart established Walmart.com and based their headquarters in Silicon Valley. They hired top talent from everyone else. And they made a number of acquisitions which they integrated so that now they are number 2 in the world in online sales, behind only Amazon. And of course, they have Amazon squarely in their sights. Further, they have leveraged their many locations to enable more convenient pickup, a key differentiator.
So this concludes all the points, and now the next one is pitfalls to avoid. And be aware that any of these options, when you are actually closely looking at whether or not you can choose any of these options, they all have trade-offs and pitfalls. So here's a list of them, and we're not necessarily going to go through each one of them. Just be aware that there's always a lot of trade-off analysis that needs to be done, and this clearly needs to be done during the process by which you're coming up with your growth strategy and then figure out ways to translate that strategy into execution. And now for a summary and a wrap up, here's Lori giving us key takeaways.
Hey, Lori, we need you to turn your microphone on.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So for key takeaways, thank you. For key takeaways, we need understand that the first 2 points are the most important: to shape a bold growth strategy, as well as understand your current situation. And this provides the framework for all of the rest of these points. In order to get started, choose only 2 or 3 of boost customer value or leverage your collaborators. so that you can flex and develop your strategy muscles. And once you've done so, then you can take on the rest of them. If you want to read further about this subject, here's a list of sources, some of which we consulted for our presentation today. Our services include mergers and acquisitions, as well as advising companies on growth, either organic or inorganic. On March 22nd, in the Tysons, Virginia area, that's outside Washington, D.C., we are having a growth boot camp. If you're in the area, please join us on that day. If you're interested in a virtual growth boot camp, please let us know by emailing us at solutions@beyondma.com. The email address is in the sidebar where you post your questions. Finally, if you would like to speak with us further, here's how to reach us, both myself and Hector Del Castillo. Also, if you have feedback about today's presentation, we would love to hear what you have to say. I want to thank you for joining us today, and I'm going to open up the floor for questions. Please post your questions in the sidebar, and we'll be happy to address them.
And Lori, one of the things that I wanted to also share with the audience is that we actually have pushed via the chat window a link where you can view the entire slide deck. We actually have created a post-event landing page where you can view all our slides, and it's available to you. And that you can click through and actually view that landing page. In the future, posting other information, and be aware that all the links that are here are actually hyperlinks, live hyperlinks, so you can, when you're viewing the slides, you can actually click through and go directly to that page that either has the reference or the videos that we talked about earlier in our discussion today. So be sure to access that information via the post-event landing page, and we actually send that information out via the chat window, so be on the lookout for that. We did have at least a couple of requests for information where people can find that. And as we're waiting for questions, Lori, one of the things that I wanted to ask is, of the biggest barriers to growth, what are the things that we talked about that you believe are the ones that can actually be overcome with some of the things that we discussed during our discussion today?
Thank you, Hector. I appreciate that. One of the things that strikes me as we were preparing for this presentation today was the courage that it takes to disrupt yourself if you're a company. It's very tempting to continue to do exactly what you've done in the past because it's worked so well, and maybe not paying so much attention to the trends, especially online trends, and other changes in the marketplace. But paying attention to those things, really understanding your competitive and your industry landscape, and remaining on top of the changes helps tremendously in keeping the company on top, keeping people employed, maintaining your reputation, being able to be a change for good in the world if that's what you choose to do.
Well, one thing that actually strikes me is that, you know, with disruption being so widespread in today's environment, today's business environment, how so many companies are struggling to even figure out how to retain customers, because in reality, they have a lot more competition today than they were originally tracking. And typically what we find is that companies are tracking the usual suspects, so to speak, their closest competitors, and they don't really consider other smaller companies as competition. And in reality, is the sheer volume of the smaller companies that are all saying, hey, we offer this too, that are actually disrupting the marketplace because they either take a mobile first approach or a voice command first approach, or in today's environment, either artificial intelligence to automate responses and even providing actionable insights. It's what really strikes me that most companies are kind of struggling to figuring out, what does this really mean to us and what does it really mean to our customers? And many of these things, when they're available to customer segments, are sort of like changing their buyer behavior. And often that's, where the struggle is in figuring out how to continue to enhance the customer experience when all these expectations are sort of changing constantly.
I think that's a great point. And if you're only looking at your closest competitors, you're going to miss small disruptive forces until you're so far behind you cannot catch up. So you have to be paying attention. And if you need to, hire the right help and expertise to make sure you stay on top.
And I also want to point out that this is where some of these options that are about acquisition to actually figure out how to leapfrog your competition becomes even more important in today's environment, because often, even when you're not really executing according to your expectations on organic growth, you still need to explore other ways of thinking differently and enhancing the value proposition to your customers by focusing on other things that are not about organic growth, but it's really about who do you partner with or who do you acquire that is either downstream or upstream from you that actually allows you to increase your value proposition quickly and making sure that your business model continues to be scalable.
I think one of the most important things that often is not discussed very much is the value of partnerships and joint ventures and joining forces with others that can help you and you help them. And top companies typically have very strong networks of suppliers and partners. Nobody gets big and successful by themselves. It's always a team effort, whether that's your internal team or your external team.
Yes. So I wasn't really sure. I don't see any questions on the chat window, and I wasn't really sure if I missed something. But if you have any questions, go ahead and type them into your chat window. And Kathy, let us know if you missed anything. But I don't see anything that we have not addressed so far. Do you see anything?
Yeah, there was an earlier question that was asking you to provide the TED Talk URL. And I'm not sure what that was, but maybe you could type that in the chat box.
Yes, actually, that is the link that is available from the slide deck, and you can actually access that on the landing page that we have sent out via the chat. Actually, I'll send that out right now. Also, again, awesome. You can actually get to that hyperlink, any live hyperlink. That's all in the slide deck, and that's available on this link that I just sent out via chat.
Awesome, thank you.
By the way, that slide is very close to the front. It's within the first 7 slides.
Okay. Awesome, thank you. We've got a couple more minutes if anybody has any questions or comments here for Lori or Hector. We really appreciate your time today. This was great, and I hope people reach out to you with regard possibly to your upcoming presentation that you're doing or for future information. This is great.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to point out is the bootcamp is meant to be a strategic planning workshop where business owners can come in and walk them through the 4-step process to actually have a well-defined, well-developed, and executable strategy, and they can learn the process by which they will can go back to their business, and after taking a first pass through this workshop, they will be able to do this all over again with their management team, their executive teams, and other stakeholders that are needed in order to actually get the right plan in place that is executable and measurable for their business so they can actually get positive growth.
Yeah, Susan commented here, the hyperlink goes directly to a synopsis of your talk, not a link to the presentation.
I did send a message out that if you scroll down, you will see the charts. So,
Okay.
yes, thank you for that question.
Yeah, and Susan, know that if you go to witty.com/webinars/archive, within about an hour, you will be able to actually access the recording of today's webinar as you've seen, with also watching the slides. So that's certainly another way to access the presentation. Awesome. Well, Lori and Hector, I want to thank you so much. This was an awesome presentation, and we really appreciate all the valuable information that you shared with us today. And I know this is going to be amazing for our business owners.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you. It was a pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. Hector, thank you for typing that in. And Susan said, thanks, you're not seeing the slides. So if you're not a member of WITI, you won't be able to access the archived recording, which is true. And you may want to be able to reach out to Lori and Hector, because you will get a copy of the recording, and I believe you're going to share that with people.
Yes,
we definitely are.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Awesome. So yeah, just contact Lori and Hector. You've got their contact information, and you can get it that way. Awesome.
Great.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time, and I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and we will look forward to seeing you next time. Take care, and thank you, Hector and Lori. Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.